everyone, this is CA Samiksha Sethia. Welcome to the fourth lecture of our Let's Update Audit series. As you all know, in this Let's Update Audit series, we are covering the additional concepts, questions and examples that the Institute has given for your CA Inter Auditing and Assurance study material for the May 21 examination and onwards. If you haven't watched the previous videos of this series, I will give the link of the playlist in the description box. आप जाके उसको देख सकते हैं. In this particular lecture, as you can see, we are going to discuss the fourth chapter, that is risk assessment and internal control. Right? So let us start with the fourth chapter, that is risk assessment and internal control. So in this particular chapter, Institute ने कुछ भी नए concepts नहीं डाले हैं. A few examples and case studies, illustrations have been added and some questions of course. So let us start. पहला जो illustration है, it is on audit risk. Strength Limited purchased a plant machinery for rupees 2 crores in the financial year 2020-21. The accountant of Strength Limited debited rupees 2 crores in the repair and maintenance account in the statement of profit and loss instead of taking it to the balance sheet as property, plant and equipment and claim depreciation on it. While auditing the accounts of this company, the auditor did not notice this and consequently did not report anything regarding the plant and machinery. Therefore, the opinion given by the auditor would be inappropriate, resulting in audit risk. So we all know audit risk क्या होता है? Audit risk is nothing but the risk that the auditor expresses an inappropriate audit opinion when the financial statements are materially misstated. Clear? चलिए एक बार हम लोग recall कर लेते हैं audit risk के कितने components हैं. अगर मैं आपको बताऊं audit risk के अगर हम लोग components देखें, one is the risk of material misstatements. Second one is the detection risk. Risk of material misstatement again divided into two parts. One is inherent risk, second one is control risk. ठीक है? तो next topic is regarding control risk. During the financial year 2021, certain accounting transactions regarding purchases of material and some disclosures required to be made in the financial statements of Appreciation Limited were misstated, and those misstatements were material in nature. There was a risk that internal control operating in Appreciation Limited would not be able to find and then rectify those misstatements in proper time. So when internal controls are present but they are unable to prevent, detect or correct misstatements, उस risk को क्या कहते हैं? Control risk. So this risk is known as control risk. Control risk और जो internal controls का efficiency है उसमें inverse relationship है. That means if the internal controls are efficient and effective, in that case the control risk will be low, because अगर internal controls efficient है, it will prevent the misstatements, it will detect the misstatements on time. But अगर controls ineffective है, in that case it will not be able to prevent, detect the misstatements, right? Hence there is an inverse relationship between the efficiency of internal control and control risk, right? There is an inverse relationship. Mark this. Okay. Next example is relating to detection risk. Detection risk क्या होता है? When the auditor's audit procedures will fail to prevent, detect or correct the misstatements, right? So while auditing the books of accounts of Grateful Limited for the financial year 2021, the auditor of the above mentioned company used various audit procedures, for example, observation, inspection, reperformance, recalculation, etc., for obtaining audit evidence regarding stock, debtors, sale, purchases, etc., and consequently reducing the audit risk. तो ऑडिटर ने कई सारे प्रोसीजर्स परफॉर्म किए, कई तरह की टेक्निक्स यूज करी, ऑब्जर्वेशन एटसेट्रा, टू रिड्यूस द ऑडिट रिस्क एंड टू ऑब्टेन ऑडिट एविडेंस. But still, there is no 100% guarantee or absolute assurance that all the misstatements would be detected. So there always remains a risk that various audit procedures as used by auditor of Grateful Limited will not be able to detect misstatements which are material in nature, and this risk is known as detection risk. Am I clear? Yes, ma'am. चलिए next illustration देखते हैं. Again, it is relating to audit risk. लिखा गया है, अ पार्टनरशिप फर्म ऑफ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स HT and Associates was appointed to audit the books of accounts of Wind and Ice Limited for the financial year 2021. There was a risk that HT and Associates would give an inappropriate audit opinion if the financial statements of Wind and Ice Limited are materially misstated. State the risk mentioned in the question. तो इस risk को हम क्या कहते हैं? Audit risk. Because audit risk is the risk that auditor expresses an inappropriate audit opinion when the financial statements are materially misstated. So it is known as audit risk. चलिए next illustration देखो. While auditing the books of accounts of Heavy Material Limited for the financial year 2021, a team member of the auditor of Heavy Material Limited showed no inclination towards understanding the business and the business environment of the above mentioned company. Is the approach of the team member of the auditor of Heavy Material Limited correct or incorrect? Also give reasoning for the same. So don't you think that understanding of the entity and its environment, including the controls, is imperative for audit? Yes ma'am. ऐसे 315 भी हमें ये कहता है कि obtaining an understanding of the entity and its environment, including the entity's internal control, is very important. It helps the auditor, number one, in planning the audit. क्या आपको controls के ऊपर rely करना है या नहीं करना है? What should be your audit strategy? It also helps the auditor in identifying areas which require special attention during the course of audit. So, ये जो team member का opinion है कि entity को समझने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है, it is incorrect. Okay. Next question देखो. Illustration. The team member of the auditor of Simple and Easy Limited was of the view that understanding the internal control of the company would not help them in any manner in relation to audit procedures to be applied while conducting the audit. तो अब इनको लग रहा है कि चलिए प्लानिंग में हेल्प करेगा, बट जो ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स हम परफॉर्म करेंगे उसमें इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स हमें कहीं पे भी बेनिफिट नहीं करेंगे. इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स की अंडरस्टैंडिंग विल नॉट हेल्प अस. बट दिस इज ऑल्सो इनकरेक्ट because once the auditor obtains an understanding of the internal controls, it helps them in again developing the audit strategy, and it also helps them in deciding the nature, timing and extent of their audit procedures. अगर auditor को controls के ऊपर rely करना है तो they can do less of substantive testing, but अगर उनको controls पे rely नहीं करना है then they have to do more in-depth checking. Substantive audit procedures need to be performed in depth. Okay, चलिए next illustration देखो. Mr. Y, one of the team member of the auditors of What and Where Limited, was very keen in knowing whether the internal control of the company would safeguard the company's assets and it would help in identifying the areas where internal control is weak. Advise Mr. Y. So yes, definitely internal controls will help in safeguarding the assets of the company. इनफैक्ट इंटरनल कंट्रोल का ये एक पर्पस है. हम कह सकते हैं इंटरनल कंट्रोल इज डिजाइन्ड इन ऑर्डर टू सेफगार्ड द असेट्स. वन ऑफ द पर्पस इज दैट अगेन द वीक एरियाज वुड ऑल्सो बी आइडेंटिफाइड. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन देखो. In order to evaluate the internal control of Your and My Limited, a team member of the auditors used a method according to which, so you have to identify the method of evaluation of internal control in this case, right? So according to this method, number of questions relating to internal control of the company were required to be answered by the employees of the company. After obtaining the answers, there was a discussion relating to those answers between team member of the auditor and employee of the company for a clear picture. State the method of evaluation of internal control as discussed above. तो जिस मेथड में हम एम्प्लॉयज से कुछ क्वेश्चंस का आंसर लेते हैं रिलेटिंग टू इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स, उस मेथड का नाम है इंटरनल कंट्रोल क्वेश्चनर. A questionnaire is being prepared which contains various questions relating to internal controls, और वो questions का आंसर किसको देना होता है? एम्प्लॉयज को देना होता है. अगर उन questions का आंसर ऑडिट टीम मेंबर्स, ऑडिट असिस्टेंट्स provide, the audit assistants give the answer, उसको हम कहते हैं audit checklist. But questionnaire is given to the employees, to the client entity. Okay. Next illustration. Healthy and Useful Limited is into small manufacturing as well as trading business. For the purpose of evaluating the internal control of Healthy and Useful Limited, A team member of the auditors of the company used a method according to which the whole description of internal control that was operating in the said company was to be recorded. So the description of internal control was to be recorded. इस मेथड का नाम क्या है? इसको मैम हम कहते हैं नरेटिव रिकॉर्ड, wherein the entire internal control, all the control points which are there is documented. उसको हम कहते हैं narrative record. Okay. Next illustration देखो. One of the team members of the auditors of Highly Capable Limited was of the view that materiality and audit risk are only considered at the planning stage of audit, comment as an auditor. तो बिल्कुल गलत है ये तो. मटीरियलिटी ऑडिट रिस्क के कॉन्सेप्ट को हम प्लानिंग में भी यूज करते हैं, नंबर 1, परफॉर्मिंग स्टेज में भी यूज करते हैं फील्ड वर्क के टाइम पे, एंड ऑल्सो इन इवेल्युएटिंग वेदर द आइडेंटिफाइड मिस स्टेटमेंट्स आर मटीरियल और नॉट. वहां पे भी तो मटीरियलिटी यूज करेंगे ना. आज मिस स्टेटमेंट्स मैंने आइडेंटिफाई कर ली. नाउ इन ऑर्डर टू असेस वेदर दीज मिस स्टेटमेंट्स आर मटीरियल और नॉट, अगेन आई हैव टू यूज मटीरियलिटी. ऑडिट रिस्क भी वहां पे मुझे यूज करना पड़ेगा टू असेस कि मैंने क्या ऑडिट रिस्क को एक्सेप्टेबली लो लेवल तक रिड्यूस किया या नहीं किया. सो दीज टू कॉन्सेप्ट्स आर यूज इन द प्लानिंग, परफॉर्मिंग स्टेज एंड ऑल्सो इन इवेल्युएटिंग द इफेक्ट ऑफ आइडेंटिफाइड मिस स्टेटमेंट्स. ओके, नेक्स्ट इलस्ट्रेशन देखो. Mr. N, one of the team members of the auditors of Reasonably Cheerful Limited, was of the view that risks that were identified during the course of audit were not required to be documented. ये कह रहे हैं कि जो भी हमने risks identify करी है RMM, उसको document करने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है. Explain with a reason whether the viewpoint of Mr. N is justified or not. Of course it is not justified. जो भी risks आपने identify करी है उसको you have to document. You have to also document the risks and the related controls which are there in place to reduce these risks, right? Okay. Next illustration is regarding applicability of internal audit. So Windy Limited is an unlisted public company, unlisted public limited company. During the financial year 1920, paid up capital was rupees 60 crore. During the financial year 2021, Board of Directors of the company, in order to comply with the provisions of Companies Act 2013, appointed an internal auditor. Give the justification of this appointment done by the Board of Directors of Windy Limited. तो यहाँ पे कौन सा सेक्शन हम लोग यूज करते हैं मैम? सेक्शन नंबर 138 ऑफ कंपनीज एक्ट, राइट? जो कहता है कौन कौन सी कंपनीज को, ठीक है, ऑफ कोर्स रेड विद द कंपनीज अकाउंट्स रूल्स विच सेज दैट विच कंपनीज आर रिक्वायर्ड टू अपॉइंट इंटरनल ऑडिटर्स. अनलिस्टेड पब्लिक कंपनी में एक क्राइटेरिया ये है दैट द पेड अप शेयर कैपिटल ऑफ द इमीडिएटली प्रीसीडिंग फाइनेंशियल ईयर इज ग्रेटर दैन इक्वल टू 50 करोड़. तो इस केस में 60 करोड़ था, प्रीवियस ईयर का, प्रीसीडिंग ईयर का पेड अप कैपिटल वो 60 करोड़ विच इज मोर देन 50 करोड़. Hence, Board of Directors were to appoint an internal auditor and they did so. So, the action is justified. चलिए, next question देखिए. Extremely Fine Limited is an unlisted public company again. For the financial year 1920, the turnover of the above mentioned company was rupees 256 crore. In order to comply with the provisions of Companies Act 2013, Board of Directors during the financial year 2021 appointed an internal auditor. Comment on the appointment. Again एक और criteria ये है कि unlisted public companies में अगर immediately preceding financial year के अंदर turnover is greater than equal to how much crores? 200 crores. In that case also internal auditor must be appointed. So यहाँ पे 256 crore है तो internal auditor should have been appointed and which is appointed. So the action is justified. इसके अंदर और दो कंडीशंस क्या हैं? अनलिस्टेड पब्लिक कंपनी के अंदर आउटस्टैंडिंग बोरोइंग्स फ्रॉम बैंक्स, पब्लिक फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस 100 करोड़, ठीक है, कब? ड्यूरिंग एट एनी पॉइंट ड्यूरिंग द प्रीसीडिंग फाइनेंशियल ईयर. एंड डिपॉजिट्स इफ एक्सेप्टेड फ्रॉम द पब्लिक ग्रेटर दैन इक्वल टू 25 करोड़. तो ये दो क्राइटेरिया और है अदर देन दैट पेड अप शेयर कैपिटल एंड टर्नओवर का क्राइटेरिया. चलिए नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन देखो. वन ऑफ द डायरेक्टर्स ऑफ स्टेबिलिटी एस्टैब्लिशमेंट लिमिटेड वाज ऑफ द व्यू दैट इंटरनल ऑडिट हैज नो रिलेशन विद इंटरनल कंट्रोल ऑफ अ कंपनी. कमेंट. ऑफ कोर्स ये बिल्कुल गलत है. इंटरनल ऑडिट के अंदर एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट जॉब और टास्क इज द इवैल्यूएशन ऑफ द इफेक्टिवनेस एंड एफिशिएंसी ऑफ इंटरनल कंट्रोल्स. ठीक है. Other than that, internal audit is also there for the governance to assess the governance process, the risk management. But then internal controls का evaluation is also an important element in internal audit. So ये जो व्यू पॉइंट इनका है वो गलत है. Next illustration, see. Mr. T, one of the directors of Over Careful Limited, was of the view that internal financial controls have nothing to do with accounting records of a company. Of course, ये भी गलत है. Internal financial controls क्या होते हैं? These are policies and procedures which are there in place to safeguard the assets of the company, to prevent and detect the frauds and errors, and also to maintain the accuracy and completeness of accounting records. So, as such, since ये Companies Act के section number 134 subsection 5 का clause E define करता है internal control financial controls को इस तरह से, so of course they are very closely related to your accounting records. So all these 15 case studies or examples you can say were there in the new study material, which was not there in the previous study material. इसके अलावा अभी हम लोग कुछ differential correct incorrect questions हैं जो कि आपने कहीं ना कहीं ऑलरेडी मे भी देखा होगा, हमने क्लास में भी किया होगा, बट फिर भी एक बार अपने इसको डिस्कस कर लेते हैं सिंस दे हैव बीन फ्रेशली इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन द न्यू मटेरियल. One of the directors of Very Fresh Fruits Limited was of the view that internal auditor to be appointed must be, क्या कह रहे हैं, इंटरनल ऑडिटर जो होगा ही मस्ट बी एन एम्प्लॉय ऑफ द कंपनी. बट ये तो गलत है. सेक्शन 138 कहता है कि इंटरनल ऑडिटर मे बी अ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट, a cost accountant or such other professional as may be determined by the board, may or may not be the employee of the company. So ऐसा नहीं है कि ये जो must लिख दिया ना ये गलत है, may or may not be, so the statement is incorrect. Next question देखो. Mr. W, one of the team members of auditor of Different Limited, was of the view that understanding the internal control will not help in developing an audit program. Of course it will help in developing the audit program. कैसी बात कर रहे हैं? अगर आज आपकी strategy होती है to rely on controls, in that case हमारे audit program के अंदर substantive testing would be less. But if my strategy is to not rely on controls, substantive testing would be more. So of course it would affect the audit program. The statement is incorrect. Next question देखो. Information obtained by performing risk assessment procedures shall not be used by the auditor as audit evidence to support assessment of the risk of material misstatement. तो रैप से जो इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल रही है रिस्क असेसमेंट प्रोसीजर से, क्या वो हम ऑडिट एविडेंस जैसे यूज कर सकते हैं? इट मे बी यूज्ड, इट शैल नॉट बी यूज्ड जो है वो गलत है. दिस इज रॉन्ग. इट मे बी यूज्ड either as audit evidence or to support other audit evidences. Clear? चलो नेक्स्ट थियोरेटिकल क्वेश्चंस में कुछ क्वेश्चंस है, एक बार ब्रीफली डिस्कस करते हैं. डिटेल में नहीं डिस्कस कर रही हूँ, हिंट्स मैंने ऑलरेडी दिए हैं, सो यू कैन गो थ्रू इट. देयर इज नथिंग न्यू, नो न्यू कॉन्सेप्ट इज देयर, ओनली क्वेश्चंस आर न्यू, सो मैं डिस्कस कर रही हूँ. When auditor identifies deficiencies and report on internal controls, he determines the significant financial statement assertions that are affected by the ineffective controls in order to evaluate the effect on control risk assessments and strategy for the audit of financial statements. You have to explain. So basically when control deficiencies are identified, what is the control risk assessment? What is next that the auditor does? तो अगर control deficiencies auditor ने identify किया after evaluating the internal controls, ऐसा नहीं कह सकते कि control risk is very high. The auditor, what the auditor will do for each assertion, the auditor will evaluate more than one control. If in more than one controls अगर एक control ही ineffective है, बाकी controls are effective, in that case the auditor may adopt the strategy of rely on controls. Otherwise, if all controls relating to a particular assertion are ineffective, in that case of course not rely on controls. But if in that case also, if there are any mitigating factors, if the auditor can test some compensating controls for that same assertion, in that case also the auditor may rely on controls if that particular control is only related to one assertion. But if it is affecting multiple assertions, in that case do not rely on controls. क्लियर? चलो नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन देखो, obtaining an understanding of the entity and its environment including the entity's internal control is a continuous dynamic process of gathering, updating and analyzing information throughout the audit. Analyze and explain giving examples. तो इस क्वेश्चन को देख के you will not be clearly able to understand what to write as the answer, but if you are properly through the study material, you know that they are asking examples of application of professional judgment. ये जो examples पूछ रहे हैं, professional judgment कहाँ apply कर सकते हैं, because we have to apply professional judgment whenever we are obtaining understanding of the entity. Of course, तो कौन से areas में you can apply professional judgment? When we are determining the materiality, evaluating whether the audit evidence which is obtained is sufficient and appropriate or not. Right? Then evaluating the assumptions, the accounting assumptions that are being followed by the management, whether they are appropriate or not, evaluating the appropriateness of the accounting policies and assumptions. इसी तरह से जो भी प्रोफेशनल जजमेंट जहां आप अप्लाई करोगे वो आपको एग्जांपल्स लिखने हैं. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन देखो, इंटरनल कंट्रोल ओवर सेफ गार्डिंग ऑफ असेट्स against unauthorized acquisition, use or disposition may include controls relating to both financial reporting and operations objectives. Explain stating clearly the objectives of internal control. So objectives of internal control, if you remember, क्या थे? That all the transactions are recorded as per the approval of the proper authority. All the transactions are properly recorded. The transactions are recorded at the correct amount in the correct accounting period under the correct accounting head. Internal controls also help in safeguarding the assets. They help in prevention and detection of frauds and errors. Right? चलिए next देखो, it has been suggested that actual operation of internal control should be tested by the application of procedural tests and examination in depth. Explain with the help of example in respect of procedure for sales. So basically हमने कंट्रोल जो भी सेल्स प्रोसेस के अंदर कंट्रोल्स हैं उसको डिटेल में डिस्कस करना है. तो सेल्स प्रोसेस में इन जनरल क्या क्या कंट्रोल्स होते हैं? A sales order is prepared, right? The credit limit, the credit period that is allowed to the customer should be the normal credit period allowed to all customers. If any special credit period is allowed, proper approval should be taken, right? उसके बाद invoicing should be done properly. Before accepting the sales order, inventory level should be checked whether we can fulfill the order or not. इसी तरह से जो master price list है वहीं से prices आने चाहिए. All the prices should match the master price list. If any sale is to be made below the price which is given in the master price list, again approval is required. Then for payment there should be segregation of duties also between the employees. Payment should be properly accounted for in the correct accounting head. जिस भी person से payment receive हुआ है. All these are controls relating to the sales process. Next question देखो, Sweet Fruits Private Limited had a turnover of, so this is a private company, you see, Sweet Fruits Private Limited had a turnover of rupees 155 crore for the financial year 1920. Explain whether during the financial year 2021 Sweet Fruits Private Limited would be required or not required to appoint an internal auditor. तो private company में क्या criteria है for appointment of internal auditor? Two criteria are there, 200 and 100. If turnover of private company during the immediately preceding financial year is greater than equal to 200 crores and और उनका जो outstanding borrowings है, public borrowings from banks, financial institutions is greater than equal to 100 crore at any point of time during the preceding financial year, उस केस में उनको अपॉइंट करना पड़ेगा इंटरनल ऑडिटर. बट यहाँ पे इनका टर्नओवर कितना है? 155 crore, which is not greater than 200 crore, which is less than 200 crore, so they are not required to appoint the internal auditor. Clear? So this brings us to the end of the discussion of your chapter number 4, that is risk assessment and internal control. Okay, thank you so much everyone for watching. If you have any queries related to this, you can post down in the comment section below. How to download these notes? If you want to download these notes, मैं आपको डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में एक लिंक दूंगी, आप वहां पे जाके नोट्स को भी डाउनलोड कर सकते हैं. ओके, ऑल दी चैप्टर्स नोट्स विल बी अपलोडेड देयर. If you like this video, do hit the like button and also share with all your friends who are going to appear for the May 21 onwards examination, because ये जो differential part है इससे भी काफ़ी questions expected हो सकते हैं. Okay, thank you so much everyone. Happy learning to you, all of you, and God bless you.